The sky over Tehran split open at 6:47 a.m. on February 28, 2026. A low, rolling thunder, not from any summer storm, shook the capital as the first wave of Israeli F-35 stealth fighters and American Tomahawk cruise missiles sliced through Iranian airspace. Deep beneath the fortified compound in central Tehran, 86-year-old Ayatollah Ali Khamenei had just finished his morning prayers inside the underground bunker his inner circle simply called the vault. The elevator descent from the surface took a full 5 minutes. For decades he had survived everything thrown at him. This morning that luck ran out. The first bunker-buster missile slammed into the reinforced concrete above him. The blast wave tore through layers of steel and cement like they were tissue paper. Lights flickered once, then died completely. Choking clouds of dust and debris exploded outward. Khamenei, the man who had held absolute power over the Islamic Republic for 37 unbroken years, never reached the surface. 5 senior aides and guards died alongside him in that single, surgically precise strike. The supreme leader was gone, eliminated in broad daylight by a joint U.S. Israeli operation the Pentagon named Operation Epic Fury and the Israeli Air Force called Operation Roaring Lion. He had believed he was untouchable. He was wrong. The path that brought him to that bunker began 45 years earlier, on a warm June morning in 1981. Inside Abuser Mosque in southern Tehran, Khamenei, then a fiery 42-year-old cleric and presidential candidate, was delivering a Friday prayer sermon. A young operative connected to the Mujahideen-e-Khalq had placed a small tape recorder on the desk directly in front of him. Minutes into the speech the device emitted a high-pitched whistle. Then it detonated. The explosion ripped through Khamenei's right arm, shattered bone, tore into his chest and vocal cords. Blood soaked his white robes. The blast permanently paralyzed his right arm and altered his voice forever. Doctors gave him little chance of full recovery. Most men in his position would have withdrawn from public life, seeking safety and obscurity. Khamenei refused. He kept preaching. He kept organizing. He kept climbing the ranks of the revolution with the same cold determination that would define the rest of his life. 8 years later, in June 1989, when the Islamic Republic's founding father, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, died, the Assembly of Experts made a calculated choice. They selected Khamenei as the next supreme leader. He was not the most senior cleric in the room. He was not the most charismatic or the most theologically brilliant. But he was loyal to the core, ruthlessly calculating, and willing to make the hard decisions others avoided. That combination proved decisive. For the next 37 years Khamenei ruled Iran from the shadows, above the elected president, above parliament, above even the powerful Revolutionary Guards. He held final authority over the nuclear program, the armed forces, every major foreign policy decision, and the vast network of proxy militias stretching across the Middle East. He survived 8 years of brutal war with Iraq in the 1980s. He weathered crippling international sanctions that brought the economy to its knees. He crushed the 2009 Green Movement protests, the 2022 Woman, Life, Freedom Uprising, and the even larger street revolts that erupted in late 2025. Thousands of demonstrators were killed under his watch. Khamenei never blinked. By early 2026 he was 86 years old, increasingly reclusive and rarely seen in public. His Tehran compound sat atop a bunker so deep that the elevator alone took more than 5 minutes to reach the bottom. He had outlasted bombs, multiple assassination plots, wars on his borders and revolutions in his streets. The vault was supposed to be his final insurance policy. He believed it made him unreachable. Then, on February 27, the nuclear talks in Oman collapsed without warning. 4 weeks American and Iranian diplomats had been locked in tense negotiations trying to salvage a new deal. President Donald Trump's team demanded Iran abandon all uranium enrichment. Khamenei's representatives refused outright. Less than 24 hours later the bombs began to fall. At 2:30 a.m. Eastern Time, Trump released a pre-recorded address from Mar-a-Lago. While the world listened to his words, the first precision strikes were already hammering Tehran. The scale of the operation stunned even seasoned military analysts. Nearly 200 Israeli fighter jets, supported by American aircraft, real-time satellite intelligence and mid-air refueling tankers, struck more than 500 targets across Iran in a single, perfectly synchronized wave. Air defense radars, ballistic missile launch sites, military airfields, command bunkers and key nuclear infrastructure were hit simultaneously in Tehran, Isfahan, Karaj, Kerman, Tabriz and Shiraz. But the operation carried a fourth, never publicly admitted objective: leadership decapitation. At the very top of that target list was Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Dawn broke over Tehran like any ordinary Saturday, the first day of the Iranian work and school week. Traffic already choked the highways. Children walked to class carrying backpacks. Shopkeepers opened their stores. Then the sky filled with the roar of jets. Residents first heard the thunder. Seconds later the explosions began. Massive blasts ripped through downtown Tehran during morning rush hour. Thick black smoke poured from the presidential palace, the Ministry of Defense headquarters, and the Supreme Leader's private compound. Panicked parents yanked their children out of schools. Crowds flooded into the streets. Within minutes, Iran throttled the internet down to just 54% of normal capacity in an attempt to control the narrative. Satellite imagery released later showed Khamenei's residence reduced to smoking rubble, more than 30 precision-guided munitions dropped in one relentless pass, backed by air-launched ballistic missiles. The Israeli Air Force described the mission as the largest in its history. American forces supplied the targeting data that made the bunker strike possible. The timing was deliberate. Early Saturday morning when Khamenei was most likely to be deep inside the vault, yet carried out in daylight so the message would be impossible to miss. Nowhere, not even the deepest bunker, was safe anymore. Within hours the world watched the consequences ripple outward in real time. In Tehran, state television broke the news the following morning. Official mourning processions filled the streets, but beneath the grief lay a volatile mix of fury, exhaustion, and quiet relief. Hardline supporters chanted for revenge. Ordinary Iranians, worn down by decades of sanctions, repression, and conflict, reacted with stunned silence, some whispering private celebrations, others bracing for the chaos that always follows a power vacuum. Internationally, the reactions fractured along familiar fault lines. Israel hailed the operation as a historic victory that removed an existential threat to its survival. Gulf Arab states offered no public comment but privately breathed easier. Russia and China issued sharp condemnations, calling the strikes illegal aggression. In the United States, Trump described the action as decisive leadership that protected the free world from a nuclear Iran. Street protests erupted in several Western cities, some denouncing the assassination of a head of state, others quietly acknowledging the end of a regime long accused of sponsoring terrorism. Iran's retaliation came fast and hard. Missiles targeted U.S. bases across the region. Proxy militias in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen launched fresh waves of attacks. Oil prices surged on global markets. Insurance companies refused coverage for tankers moving through the Strait of Hormuz, slowing vital energy shipments. The economic shock waves reached every corner of the world. Yet the regime's backbone had been shattered. The single man who had held the Islamic Republic together through sheer force of will for 37 years was gone. His son Mojtaba Khamenei was quickly positioned as successor, but the transition felt fragile. The system Khamenei had built now faced its greatest test, not from protesters or foreign sanctions, but from the sudden, irreversible absence of the one figure who had kept every faction in check. The irony is as sharp as it is brutal. Khamenei had survived the 1981 mosque bombing that should have ended his life. He had survived 8 years of devastating war, multiple assassination attempts, crushing sanctions, and street revolutions that nearly toppled the regime. He had constructed the deepest bunker, the most loyal security apparatus, the most ruthless intelligence network. For nearly 4 decades he stood at the absolute center of Iranian power, seemingly invincible. Then, on a quiet February morning in 2026, a meticulously planned, precisely timed intelligence and military operation, built on years of satellite tracking, human sources, and cold strategic calculation, reached him where no previous threat ever could. He had outlasted everything except the one moment his enemies finally decided the risk of leaving him alive outweighed the risk of killing him. The supreme leader of Iran was gone, and the world he left behind would never, ever be the same again.